Every time a tariff is imposed, a decision is made in a corporate boardroom somewhere in the world. Whether it's moving a factory out of China, restructuring a supply chain in Europe, or raising prices in American retail, tariffs have evolved from background policy tools into major forces driving global manufacturing. This documentary breaks down how and why tariffs are actively reshaping how companies produce, price, and move products across borders, and what that means for the future of supply chains. Let me first show you what happens when a government taxes imports. Tariffs are taxes levied by governments on imported goods. The goal can vary: to protect domestic industries, retaliate against trade partners, or simply increase revenue. But their impact goes far beyond economics. There are two primary kinds of tariffs. Ad valorem tariffs are calculated as a percentage of the item's value, such as a 20% tariff on imported steel. Specific duties, on the other hand, apply a fixed fee per unit, like $5 added to each imported pair of sneakers. Contrary to popular belief, foreign countries don't pay tariffs directly. Importers do. That cost usually flows down the chain to wholesalers, retailers, and ultimately consumers. A tariff on semiconductors, for instance, doesn't punish overseas producers. It raises prices for electronics companies and eventually for the person buying a laptop. Tariffs are designed to reshape purchasing behavior and protect local jobs, but they also introduce volatility into global pricing structures. Now, I bet you're wondering, how did tariffs become weapons in modern trade wars? The modern wave of tariff escalation began in 2018 with the US-China trade war. Over $300 billion worth of Chinese goods were hit with tariffs, some up to 25%. China fired back, targeting American soybeans, autos, and aerospace components. Tariff wars aren't limited to the US and China. Brexit triggered a similar disruption. Once tariff-free goods flowing between the UK and the EU were suddenly subject to customs inspections and duties, delaying shipments and increasing costs. More recently, the European Union introduced its Carbon Border Adjustment Mechanism, CBAM, a landmark policy that applies tariffs based on the carbon emissions associated with imported goods. This reflects a new reality. Tariffs are now being used to enforce environmental policy, not just protect industries. Tariffs are no longer isolated tools. They've become central weapons in trade conflicts and regulatory enforcement. Up next, let me show you how companies like Apple and Nike are dodging tariffs without breaking the law. One of the clearest responses to tariffs has been relocation. Many firms are no longer willing to keep production in countries subject to high tariff exposure. Instead, they're spreading operations across Vietnam, India, Mexico, Poland, and other lower-risk zones. Nike, for instance, has expanded production in Southeast Asia. Apple is building iPhones in India. Automakers are investing in Mexico to benefit from the zero-tariff framework of the USMCA. Beyond relocation, there's a rise in tariff engineering. Some companies tweak the design or packaging of products to legally qualify for lower-duty classifications. Others shift minor assembly steps abroad so goods qualify as being made in tariff-friendly country, even if the core components come from elsewhere. These shifts underscore a key point. Tariffs don't just change prices, they reshape global production strategy. Tariffs aren't invisible. Why prices are rising for everyone? The economic impact of tariffs is visible at every level of the supply chain. A 2020 study by the Peterson Institute for International Economics found that the average cost of tariff-affected imports rose between 15% and 20%. This wasn't due to raw material costs or inflation. It was a direct result of tariff policies. Products like washing machines, furniture, electronics, and construction materials became more expensive. Not only because tariffs raised costs, but because businesses had to adjust their entire logistics processes to compensate. Some firms responded by passing the full cost to consumers. Others reduced margins or scaled back product features to maintain price points. At scale, these cost pressures influenced everything from retail pricing to job structures, especially in small to mid-sized businesses that couldn't absorb added fees as easily as multinational giants. Now I bet you're wondering, is globalization dead? Let me show you how it's just becoming more local. In response to rising tariffs, shifting geopolitics, and supply chain shocks, Many companies are no longer relying on global trade in its old form. Instead, they're doubling down on regional trade agreements to maintain stability while reducing exposure to risk. The United States-Mexico-Canada Agreement, USMCA, makes it easier for companies to build, source, and ship goods across North America, cutting costs, shipping times, and tariff risks. In the Asia-Pacific, the CPTPP plays a similar role by linking countries like Japan, Vietnam, and Australia through lower tariffs and shared trade rules, helping firms shift away from high-risk zones like China while staying in the region. Other frameworks, such as the Association of Southeast Asian Nations, ASEAN, Free Trade Area, and the African Continental Free Trade Area, AFCFTA, are also playing increasingly important roles in driving intra-regional trade and investment. These agreements are driving the rise of nearshoring, moving production closer to end markets, and friendshoring, where supply chains stay within politically aligned countries. It's no longer just about cutting costs, it's about building agility, trust, and resilience. The old model of one megafactory in a low-cost country is giving way to multi-hub strategies, networks built for efficiency, trade advantages, and geopolitical safety. In this new world, regionalism is the new globalization, and companies that adapt gain more control and leverage in an unpredictable trade environment. Now let's take a look ahead, because tariffs aren't going away, they're only getting smarter. If the past 7 years are any indication, tariffs are here to stay, but their form is evolving. We're seeing the rise of environmental tariffs based on carbon output and green regulations, as countries use trade policy to enforce climate commitments. At the same time, digital tariffs are emerging around cross-border data usage, cloud services, and digital goods. In strategic sectors like semiconductors, pharmaceuticals, and rare earth minerals, trade itself is becoming weaponized, used as leverage in geopolitical power plays. This new era of fragmented globalization doesn't eliminate trade. It reshapes it around trust, strategy, and national interest. For companies, this shift demands greater investment in scenario planning, risk management, and supply chain flexibility. It also means that understanding tariff structures is no longer the sole responsibility of legal or compliance teams. It's now essential knowledge for leaders in operations, procurement, and logistics who are navigating a global landscape that's being redrawn in real time. And finally, here's what you really need to know about the future of global manufacturing. Tariffs are more than taxes. They are levers of control, signals of policy shifts, and triggers for global reorganization. They've changed how companies build products, where they build them, and how much they cost. They've transformed logistics from a cost-driven function to a strategic differentiator. For students, professionals, and policy watchers alike, understanding tariffs is no longer optional. It's fundamental to grasping how global manufacturing will evolve in the years ahead. Tariffs aren't just taxes, they're shaping where products are made, how much they cost, and who stays competitive. If you want more insights on global trade and supply chains, hit subscribe and stay ahead of what's next.